It is because of empathy that we care more about a little girl stuck in a well than we do about the crisis of climate change or global terrorism or anything statistical and future oriented. Empathy zooms us in on particular concerns, often very real and significant concerns, but it causes us to blow them out of proportion. Worse, what it could sometimes do is cause us to address problems in ways that make the world worse. So one example I'll give a hypothetical example, is that if a little girl dies from a vaccine, or gets very sick from a vaccine, we'll often shut down the vaccine program. Even if a dozen girls are saved each year, a dozen people are saved each year by it, because you could feel the suffering of the girl, of her family. But the statistical abstraction that there are people who would have died but didn't leaves us cold. And we can talk about some real world examples like that. So one problem of empathy is it misdirects our action. Another problem of empathy is it's used as a tool for violence and aggression. So for every atrocity, every poorly thought out war, people use empathy as a way to elicit aggression. I mean, we inevitably, for any discussion, sooner or later we have to discuss Trump. And Trump may or may not be an empathic man, but he is certainly adroit at using the empathy of others. And in fact, a lot of his attacks on immigration, and particularly in Ann Coulter's book, which motivated Trump's feelings on immigration, are actually not sort of nasty claims about immigrants per se. They're horrible stories of people raped or killed or assaulted by immigrants. And you read these stories and you feel terrible. And this terribleness, this empathy for these victims naturally translates into aggression. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when people think about empathy, they think about puppies and charity and helping out lost people and everything. I think about going to war. Mm-hmm. Because whenever you see a war, just or unjust, it's used as a tool. If we ever go to a full-scale war against ISIS, we're going to see more and more videos of people beheaded.
Okay, yeah. So there's a couple of different things there. One of them is it leads you to focus on an individual case and shower resources on it, and take resources away from things that are less concrete, but maybe involve more people, more suffering, maybe in the future. You mentioned the girl in the well. Our younger viewers may be too young to recall how much time was eaten up on CNN and other networks by a girl. I think her name was Jessica. I don't know, but she was in a well. I think it was West Texas. She was stuck in a well.
The Midlands, yeah.
Midland, where I used to live, actually. That's why I remember it. It just went on, and, they could communicate with her, and, somewhat predictably, I think they got her out, right?
They did.
I don't think, actually, all the attention showered on her globally facilitated the getting out, but...
No. It's just, to get somebody out of a well, you just got to take some patience and so on. But if you don't remember, if you're, too young for that, and I know your readers, your watchers trend very young.
Trend. We have the demographic most sought by advertisers.
Mostly millennials. You're
affluent and 22 years old, all of them.
So a 22-year-old might remember Natalie Holloway, attractive girl, lost, kidnapped, murdered in Aruba, and that also captivated everybody's attention. During which time there was this ongoing slaughter in Africa, costing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives. And Paul Slovic, who is a psychologist who makes sense of these things, points out that network news didn't cover any of the Africa thing. They were endless wall-to-wall coverage of Natalie Holloway case. And I'm not denying the moral significance of baby Jessica's life or Natalie Holloway's life, but empathy throws everything out of proportion. And it's not just numerically out of proportion. I don't have many stories of people weeping over black girls or people who aren't American, because there are no such stories. Empathy is not only innumerate, it's also extraordinarily racially biased. You see this in the lab. You see all of these experiments involving watching a brain light up in empathic responses, and it's biased in every way you could imagine.
Okay, so this gets to one of the issues with empathy, which is that we do not bestow it equally on individuals. I mean, leaving aside the fact that focusing it too much on any one individual may be morally problematic from your point of view, there are findings about the kinds of people that we're likely to shower empathy on. It has to do partly with their relationship with us, right?
Yep. There's tons of findings. So some of them focus on the relationship. Were they kind to us in the past? Are they friends or foes? Some of the findings have to do with what we think of them morally. So one classic study looked at empathic responses to AIDS victims. And it turned out that if you were told that they got AIDS through an injection or through a blood transfusion, empathy flowed freely. But if you were told they got it through unprotected sex, it shut down. Mm-hmm. And then there's all this affiliation work. So one of the sort of Psych 101 findings that will always replicate is we care more about our group than for other groups. This is the bread and butter of so much of your theorizing and so much of your writing. So one cool illustration this is done in Europe, and I'm giving all the neuroscience of empathy studies because they're kind of a pretty direct measure, is they got these European soccer fans, and they got to witness the pain of somebody else. And when this other person was described as a fan of the same team, they had empathy. The same pain areas that would activate if they themselves were in pain lit up when they watched other ones in pain. If they were told that these guys were fans of the other team, not only did empathy drop, parts of the brain associated with pleasure light up. So, and from an objective point of view, you step back. So we also have the capacity to step back. To some extent, my book is about how smart we are. Because you could say, yeah, actually, 100 lives is worth more than one. Actually, a black girl matters as much as a white girl. Actually, soccer affiliation shouldn't matter. When you step back, you see how irrational our empathic responses are and how immoral.